from how many months ago.
Hey, we're live. I don't do the musical interlude on the Thursday show.
You want me? I got a guitar behind me. If you want me to just play an intro.
Wait, you got 12 guitars.
I actually have about twice that many, but I don't have pictures of all of them. So.
Oh, well.
There's literally a guitar 5 feet from me that way, and one about 12 feet from me that way, and one about 14 feet from me that way.
See, I would expect that about guns, but not about guitars. Anyway, before we get really yeah. Well, before we get really kicked off, the views and opinions expressed in this broadcast are not those of the SCV or GC, nor any division, brigades, camps, or subsidiaries. Only those of us that are expressing them. Good evening, everyone. Hey, Sean, I don't know if you meant to call me or not, but I saw our missed call. Jesse Logan. Harrison wants us to do the thing, but no. Anyway, well, we're going to continue on with our discussion. That's one reason why we're not doing the intro, because we had a great discussion for the latter half of last week's program. For those of y'all who watched our coverage of the AOT workshop, you heard part of what Carl and I are going to talk about. But we really want to talk about how to kind of improve our organization on every single level. Throw out ideas, things like that. If you remember when I signed off, I said, y'all come up with some ideas there in the chat so that we could talk about them live on air and really start this new fiscal year off with a kick. So, hey, Carl.
How you doing, Faversham?
Faversham to you. I'm fantastic. So, you want to kick it off or you want me to kick it off?
You kick it off, man. What do we
well, as a recap from Monday evening, some of the things that we talked about were the same things that you and I had talked about when we were on the National Heritage Heritage Ops end of things back during Tom Strain's administration 6 years ago, which it doesn't feel like it's been that long, but you go back and count Commander-in-Chiefs, it has been. So things like getting involved in your community, going out and, also stuff that Donnie Kennedy was talked about when he was Heritage Ops Chair, publicizing your events, doing, not necessarily starting off a conversation with Lincoln bashing, but even though we do like to bash Lincoln, figuring out a way how to open a conversation to the general public to be able to get them interested in the SCV, but then at the same time, different ways to keep your membership active and interested so that, you're helping with your retention effort.
Yeah, I think retention's crucial. I think that we've all learned at some point throughout our lives, sometimes it's not merely what you say, but how you say it. I got an example of that. A friend of mine, longtime compatriot of the SCV, went and he bashed Lincoln publicly in an enlightening way that didn't come across as negative or derogatory. But he went on one of those school trips that the middle schools take to Washington, D.C. with his daughter. And they were the tour guide who was thoroughly PC'd, and they were touring the Lincoln Memorial. And the tour guide very gleefully turns to the crowd and asks, "Okay, who can tell us something about Lincoln?" And of course, she was expecting everybody to shout out, "He freed the slaves, the Gettysburg Address, blah, blah, blah." And our compatriot yelled out, "Gave us the first income tax and created the IRS." And a hush fell over the crowd. And the tour guide was caught completely off guard and said, "Okay, let's move along." So you could open. I mean, you can do things in an educational manner without coming across, like a rabid pit bull that's like, just trying to grab them by the jugular and ram everything down their throat. But the point of that, when I brought that up at the AOT conference back in February, March, whenever that was, I don't remember, was positivity is more likely to sell when you're trying to recruit for your camp than a negative message. If you come across, and Donnie and I, we've all had these conversations, but in the eyes of the uneducated, we are all radicals. Okay, that's the way they view us. We're not. We're historians, but we don't want to come across as a radical. So you kind of have to temper in some manner what you're saying, and still be able to get the same message across. One of the things, and this I'm talking about in our recruiting efforts. One of the things that I think that a lot of camps lack, and that we discussed back at the AOT workshop, was to have a recruiting plan. I wonder how many camps out there have one. Have they it's just like if you open up a business, whether it's a major corporation or a hot dog stand, it doesn't matter. Hopefully you have a business plan. We have an idea of what we want to accomplish over the next year. And the same thing is true of your camp. Where do we hope to be? Well, you need a recruiting plan. You might set up a recruiting committee to put this plan together and to determine how are we going to fulfill the goals that we have. Fill the committee with people who are active and well spoken, and that goes back to what we're talking about. You can say things that would otherwise be negative. You can say them in an enlightening, educational, positive manner that gets people's attention. So have well-spoken, well-thought-out people on the committee. And this is not to say that, only certain people should be on the committee. We're not being prejudicial here to any of our members. It's just that certain people have gifts that others don't have, and vice versa. Myself, for example, I can sit there and talk all night. But if you want your car repaired, I'm not the guy to bring, because I have no mechanical skills whatsoever. My wife doesn't even like me to have tools. I don't have the patience for that kind of thing. Okay, so we all have our own gifts. So try to fill the committee out with, or put into your recruiting team, well-spoken, articulate people. And those who understand the message of the SCV. And it may be a good idea to have somebody educate the members of this committee on a basic sales pitch. In the business world, we might call this our elevator speech. What is going to get you on that ground floor? What's going to get the door open for you? But they have a message that they can use to explain the organization to potential members. And again, the message should be positive. It should give a positive example of who we are. Maybe initiatives that we've accomplished in our own divisions, in our own areas. Nationally, we might talk about, for example, the Confederate Museum, or for example, Beauvoir, or things of that nature that we've functions that we've put on. Positivity attracts people. I've seen it over and over again where you have a camp that pops up that is going to follow the kind of line that, okay, our camp is more Confederate than you. Universally, almost, those camps tend to fail, frankly. They'll hit a plateau of 8 or 9 members. They'll stay there, and within 3 or 4 years, they'll fall off. Well, there's a reason. It's because their message, true as it may be, is not selling.
Yeah, and one great way to do that, especially talk about the positive things that y'all have accomplished, and it's a way for your camps to be able to kind of toot their own horn. Create a scrapbook. I mean, we have a national scrapbook award. My division, I don't know about Alabama's, but our division, we have a scrapbook award. When you go to set up at a gun show or wherever you're going to recruit at, all you have to do is just flip. All right, so what does the SCV do? Boom. All right, here we are, raising money for or feeding police officers on Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. Here we are cleaning tombstones. Here we are protecting a monument. This, that, and the other. Even if you don't enter it into be judged for either the national or division, whatever award you have, it at least shows people what you've done, and it's also a good history of your camp.
Yeah, I agree. Over the course of the last year or the last decade, I mean, it shows that you're active and you want to show different things that you're involved in. I think one of the big misnomers that people outside the SCV, when they hear who we are, they think we're a reenactment group. I probably first heard of the SCV in about 1990 or 91, 92. I was playing in a band at that time, and there was a group of 3 or 4 young guys that used to come in the club where my band was playing, and they'd always trying to get me to join the SCV, but all they talked about was reenacting. Well, I'd just gotten out of the Marine Corps, and I had slept in tents for months on end before. And the last friggin' thing I wanted to do was to go reenact and sleep in tents again. Okay, that's not my wheelhouse. I'm not into that. Okay,
sleep in tents, do a 12-mile march for fun.
No, it was more like 35 for us, but yeah.
I'm talking about on the reenactment.
Yeah. So I didn't join until 2004 when I finally got a different picture of what the SCV was. And so, you don't want to be all centered around reenactments. In your scrapbook, you might include them if you're doing those, but also be involved in other things, living histories, local festivals, gun shows, any place in your community that will allow you to have a booth. And the goal here is to have a presence in your community. Yeah, Jimmy Hill said this years ago. Jimmy and I were brigade commanders at the same time back, I don't remember how many years ago, 12, 14 years or so ago. And he would come speak to my workshops. I'd put on a workshop in our brigade, and he would do the same in his. He'd come speak to my brigades. I'd come, my brigade. I'd come speak to his. And I heard him say this one time: you should be viewed in your community. You should be viewed no differently than the Civitans or the Rotary Club or the Elks Lodge or any other civic organization. That's the image that we want to create in that community, because at the end of the day, that's where we are. That's what we are as a civic organization. We are a society of descendants of Confederate soldiers who exist to promote the memory and the good name and the true cause of our ancestors. That's a very benign message. And if we're not present in our community, if we're not, out in our community presenting a positive image, guess what? The other side will present our image for us, and it won't be anything related to who we actually are. It will be negative. And that's where we wind up with, heritage offenses and situations that we have to go out and try to fight in various ways.
Right, and especially if we're not active in our community, because 9 times out of 10, it's outside agitators coming in to do something. And it's not your local, and of course there are exceptions to it, but it's not the local members of your community. If you're in that small community, wanting to push to remove a Confederate monument, it's some neo-Marxist fascist that's come in from California that is pushing that. They've moved down south or they've moved into your community, and now they're pushing that. It's not our people it's the other folks. And if we're not out there in the community and we're allowing them to tell our narrative, those other people, and our local people don't know about us, don't know to stand with us and stand up for us, we've lost the battle.
Yeah, and I know Ron talked about this the other night when he did had his interview with Jason, our new commander in chief, and he talked about the polls that he and Donnie have been putting out over the years, showing these high percentages of people in various areas that support us. You know, they agree with us. They're on our side. But if we allow the other side to go out and rally their people and we don't rally ours, we lose. You know, the left is very good. Our detractors are very good at what we call in the business world guerrilla marketing. Okay, they are outnumbered, you know, maybe 100 to 1. I don't know, whatever the stats are. They're vastly outnumbered, but they are persistent and they are consistent. They never give up. They never quit. They can throw principle out the window if necessary to accomplish the next goal. And once they accomplish it, they move on to that. And the conservative movement, which pertains to us as well, is constantly fighting this delaying action or this rear guard action, trying to undo the last thing they did. And meanwhile, they've moved on to the next goal. And by the time we maybe come along and defeat whatever they did, 6 months ago, it's too late because now they've accomplished the next step. So a reactive response to what they're doing has never worked, and it's not going to work. It is absolutely mandatory. It is a necessity that our local camps get out and be who we are and show the general public who we are. And think about it, we've got, I don't remember the exact number, but it's somewhere between 800 and 870 camps throughout the country. Imagine if all of them were functioning, clicking on all 8 cylinders in their local community. That would be a proactive response. That would be a way we could nullify or negate everything that our detractors are doing.
Right. And one thing that you mentioned is consistency. We have to be consistent in what we're doing on a SCV and within our camps, but also our message that we're telling. It could be as simple as the phrase "heritage, not hate," which we've discussed about, time and time again. While it's a good thought, it's not something that we kind of need to get away from that phrase. I've gotten my camp away from that phrase because we're immediately shooting ourselves in the foot because we're introducing hate into the.
Well, you don't want to implement a negative connotation into your message. It's kind of like this. I won't name the tire company, but years ago there was a tire company that had a commercial where a tire was sliding down the road with an infant child in it. What were they selling? Were they selling tires? No, they were selling safety. So look at the opposite of that. Suppose instead the tire company came out and said, buy our tires because they won't blow out while you're driving 70 miles an hour down the road and cause you to flip your car over and kill your family.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Both are selling safety, but one of them is creating this negative, frightening image. And that's kind of what the term heritage, not hate does. No, it's just heritage. And with our heritage, one of the things I want to touch on there, and you and I have discussed it before, and this isn't my fault. I actually got this from a phone conversation years ago with Brian McClanahan. He put it in my mind, and that is we have made the mistake over the years of putting our focus on the 4-year period between 1861 and 1865 to the exclusion of the other 400 years of Southern heritage, of Southern history. People in the South love to hear about their family. You know, we like that. We're proud of where we came from. And if you can present that message where, you know, this is what we are, this is who we are, and it's in, you know, a number of arenas across the board. You know, I think that that's a positive message that we can present. Even though we're focused on the veterans, we need to understand where those veterans came from, what compelled them to fight against the odds that they did, what was in their DNA, what was in their culture that compelled them to take up arms against all odds and go to war. Well, that's all of the things that did that, all the things that motivated them are a part of our cultural and philosophical makeup. And we need to get that information out to the public as well.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, the last thing you're just saying about those taking up arms against all odds, that's 1776.
Sure it is.
That's why, you know, with 4th of July, we put out there, you know, the South was right in 1861 because America was right in 1776.
Sure.
I mean, and that's the type of phrase we need to be throwing out there, especially if we're reclaiming all of Southern history and all of Southern heritage and culture. We need to adopt that because it's equating that positivity that we feel about the American Revolution for the most part with the, you know, our Confederate forefathers. I mean, it's that little bit of positive branding goes a long way.
It's the right to self-government. At the end of the day, they fought for the right to self-government. If there's ever been a time better than now to sell that message, I haven't seen it. I'm not aware of it. I mean, look at the events going on in the country today. If there's ever a time when you could get the idea across to people that self-government, our right to govern ourselves, to have a government that is reflective of our unique culture, our unique worldview. If there's ever a time to sell that message, today is it. I mean, if you can't pick up on the importance of that now, you need to just go ahead and check out of society because you're beyond repair.
Yeah. Especially us in the SCV with the IRS being weaponized, you better believe they're coming after us.
Yeah, well, I don't want to go to yeah. Well,
that's my view and opinion.
But getting back to the plan of recruiting, look ahead for the year as a camp. You've got this committee. It should be headed by your camp second lieutenant commander or whatever you call your recruiting officer. Look ahead for the year, at least the next 6 months, and start working to secure a spot in any events in your community that may present themselves. You know, here where I live, we have a dogwood festival. We have a sweet potato festival. We have believe it or not, there is a possum day in my county. Strawberry festival. There's probably a dozen festivals that go on. I've been working on that one, but there's probably a dozen festivals that go on between spring and fall in my community. Well, start working on having a presence at those. Now, you don't want to burn your recruiting committee out. You know, they can't, you know, the same guy, he's not going to attend 12 festivals a year, 2 a month or whatever. And that's why you have more than one person involved so they can kind of, you know, alternate who shows up where and what day. Try to have at least a couple of people, though, at each event so that you have a presence. If you can have 5 to 10, I mean, that's even better, but at least have a couple of them. And again, you need to choose people that are not only well-spoken, but that are willing to engage the public and communicate our message and talk about who we are. One of the most important things you can do at a recruiting event or at even a PR event is to this is very simple, have a notepad to write down contact information, phone number, email address, mailing address, whatever, however that person wants to be contacted. and then follow up. The follow up is crucial. It's just like advertising. In the advertising world, most people do not react to a message the first time they see it. I saw a statistic years ago where the average person would see a billboard 12 times before they would actually react to that billboard. So think in those terms. So follow up is crucial. If you get the name and contact information for this person who's expressed an interest and you never contact them, you never follow up with them, well, guess what? You didn't accomplish anything. 99% of the time, you're never going to see that person again. Follow up not just once, but invite them to the next 3, 4, 5, 6, 12, however many meetings. Again, persistence. You've got to be persistent. Invite them to your, to your meetings.
Well,
Tell them what's going to happen at the meeting, why they want to be there. Again, I'm gonna throw Jimmy Hill under the bus because I stole this from him. You are competing for their time. If your meeting is on a Monday night, a Tuesday night, you are competing with football, Dancing with the Stars, whatever it is that if you don't have a meeting that is more interesting than what is coming on TV or whatever event they had planned for that night, they're going to stay home and do their thing. So
well, go ahead. Finish your thought.
Well, I was going to just say you've got to put something of an entertainment factor into your meeting, and then let not only your existing members, but these prospective members, you got to let them know what that entertainment factor is, why they need to be there.
So what I was going to say is, while you're talking to that recruit that you're following up with, if he lives nearby you or he lives nearby somebody in the camp, because you've got his contact information, get that person to offer to swing by and pick him up.
Sure.
I mean that with gas the way it is, there's if you line up with, hey, I'll even come pick you up to the meeting. Hey, what are you doing tonight? Hey, our next Monday night we got our camp meeting. How about I swing by, pick you up, we grab a bite to eat, and then we go to the meeting. It's that simple. I mean, there's that. And going back a little bit about events, when I was a recruiting officer for the division, my thing was try to have your camp have one mass effort event a quarter. Even if you're a small camp, if you have one every 3 months, and you're not going to get everybody, but if you can get that one max effort event every 4 months, that helps with your retention, because all of a sudden the camp looks like it's doing something because you are doing something. And on the other end, you're getting out there in the public eye. That's all it takes, is just one a quarter.
Yeah, I would even say one every 6 months. I mean, but have a project, have a camp project. It can be something simple as a movie night. I mean, even something like that, something to create some camaraderie within the camp, within the group. It can be a cemetery project, and again, I'm going to echo Ron and Donnie. We don't want this to be all we do, but you do need to have those types of projects, because you're going to have, if you've got a camp with 50, 75, 100 members, whatever, which is doable pretty much almost anywhere in the South, that's doable. We've got camps that have proven that. They've proved it. But if the more people you have, the more areas of interest that you have. Okay, so one guy might be interested in the cemetery project. That's his thing. Good, put him in charge of that. Let him choose his committee for that. Another guy might be more interested in the living history. Another guy might want to go visit the schools. Great. Have these projects that appeal to, across the board, to a wide array of interest. If you bog yourself down and focus on one thing, though, you're only going to attract the people into membership who are interested in that one thing, whatever it may happen to be.
So, and that kind of swings back to the point I was trying to talk about this past Monday. But the biggest, at least I see in Mississippi, one of the biggest recruiting aspects that we have nationally really is the Metcalf, but that is a niche group of guys. They're interested in that one portion. But that's not to say that you can't. Carl and I both like barbecuing. So and there are barbecue competitions. It feels like you, at least here in Mississippi, can't swing a cat without hitting one. But all of a sudden you got four guys who enjoy barbecue. Send them to the barbecue cook off. Have the camp sponsor them. You know that's recruiting and retention. There are a lot of guys that like to fish. I don't. Fishing team, tractor pull, golf.
Yeah, there are a number of areas again, just look at your community. Look at the things going on. I live in a lake community. Where I live, where my house is located, you go a mile in any direction, you're at the lake. Okay. I don't live on the lake. I live on the cow pastures. I tell people, but it's very much a lake community. There are a lot of bass tournaments that go on around here, fishing tournaments. The high schools are very involved in that sort of thing. So there's any number of things. Think outside the box. Think not just don't just nail yourself down to cemetery projects. At the end of the day, I was out in Texarkana with Paul Gramling 5 or 6 years ago when he was Lieutenant CIC and I was Chief of Heritage Ops at that time. And I'll try to not mangle this statement that I told them out there in the ATM, but basically networking creates relationships and relationships create opportunities. So the more we can get out into the public and be who we are, get involved in these things and interact with the public, the more opportunities are going to present themselves to you. We had a camp in Alabama. I won't name the camp. They probably wouldn't mind if I did, but just in case, I won't name them. But we had a camp that has been in the Christmas parade in their town for years. I don't know, probably 20 years, maybe more than that. But at least 18, 20 years they've been in the Christmas parade. And they dress up in uniforms and they hand out flags and they hand out candy and all this kind of thing. It came up a few years ago. I think I was division commander at the time. It may have been Jimmy that was division commander, but either one of the two of us. It came up that the city council had voted not to let them be in the Christmas parade anymore. You know what they did? They didn't file a lawsuit. They went public, and the public came out in their defense. The public went to the city council and said, this is a tragedy. These are non-SCV members, but they went to the mayor and the city council and said, this is a travesty. We have always enjoyed having these people in our parade. They're one of the highlights of the parade. And basically, if you're not going to allow them, well, we're not going to show up at the parade anymore. Guess what happened? They were put back in the parade. So they never missed. I mean, they were in that year. It was undone. That's what community relations will do for you. And look, I can sit here and cite about a half dozen other examples that I've seen with my own eyes, but that was one of them. So community relations are extremely, extremely important. And, I've told, our camps and divisions and armies a multitude of times, and I say the same thing. Once the average person out there in your community, when they see who we really are, not just as an organization, but as people, the fear goes away. They realize we're not some rabid hate group out flying these terrible battle flags, blah, 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 but that we are, we're a civic organization. We believe in the cause that our ancestors fought for. But we're not anywhere near, even remotely close to the group of people that our enemies are trying to paint us as. And once the general public sees that, guess what? The fear goes away And you'll find that they tend to have a whole lot more in common with us than they realize they do.
And doing everything on the camp level, because the camp is the backbone of this organization. Without the camps, the brigades don't exist, and all the way on up. But we have to do that at the camp. Now, divisional and brigade projects, I mean, just to move on a little bit, brigades do need to get together and start doing things. That's very easy. I mean, if you've got an area that is ripe for a camp on brigade lines, work together, work across, get together and do that. Whether if there's a cemetery that are close to the brigade lines again, and y'all wanting to do something, whether it's memorial service or something like that, work together, put it on, division reunions, everything like that. We just ended a national reunion that camps were working together with, putting it on and getting it taken care of. It can be done. Now, one project I do want to mention that I think we need to see divisions doing together, and we can digress back to the camps in a second. But the up at the Forest Boyhood Home, the joint project that Alabama and Tennessee did with the monument up there, that's something that we're really lacking on in this organization is inter brigades working together, or inter divisions working together to accomplish something.
Hey, can we hold that thought? I need to go get this chicken off the grill. I'm about 20 minutes late.
Well, actually, that's a perfect time for me to be able to pay our bills.
So we need to take a Pop-Tart break.
Yeah, I'm gonna pop you off and pay the bills really quickly.
All right.
I'll bring it. But we'll continue the discussion when Carl gets back. Really quickly, guys, if any of y'all are looking for gifts to get anyone coming up for birthday, Christmas, it's not too early to Christmas shop. Things of that nature, go to LarryMcClooney.com. Larry has 3 books. He's an educator, if you didn't know that. I'm having to swap brands really quickly so I can bring up all the banners and stuff so you can see the 3 books. But the website is LarryMcClooney.com, LarryMcClooney.com. He's got 3 books out. He's got the Yazoo Pass Expedition, which is the only book about the Yazoo Pass Expedition that's been published. On to Vicksburg, which covers the Central Mississippi Railroad campaign. And In Defense, or In General Beauregard's Defense, his latest book that has come out, and really it's written kind of like a court case, talking about Beauregard and the things that that history has gotten wrong about him. We did a book review on that one a couple months ago. My favorite is the Yazoo Pass Expedition because I mentioned in the foreword. If you go to LarryMcClooney.com, there are links to get that book off of Amazon, as well as his contact information. He'll be happy to take your payment over the phone if you want to buy an autographed copy, and he'll ship it to you. He's also willing to go out and talk to your camp about these books and things like that. So just reach out to him on LarryMcClooney.com, and there are those wonderful books. Let me swap back really quickly. Actually, we're going to take a short actual video commercial break while we're waiting on Carl to get back. So we'll be back in about 2 minutes.
There is a place nestled in the rolling farmland of southern Middle Tennessee. A home constructed in 1837, nearly lost to the ravages of war. Saved by a servant and a Confederate general. A place where families loved and lost. If walls could talk, what stories could be told? If a place, a home, can feel love, loss, pain, surely this is one of those places. Nearby is a more recent structure, and inside are the stories of heroes and heroines, stories of battles won and lost, stories of sacrifices made by the people of its native soil. a place that will tell the true and complete story of the Southland and the war fought for its freedom. From the causes that led to the conflict to the modern-day struggles to protect Southern history. Historic Elm Springs and the Confederate Museum at Elm Springs are the general headquarters for the Sons of Confederate Veterans. A place where the story of the Southland and its historic struggle is preserved and told. Come and discover your history.
It's raining over there, Carl.
What's that?
Looks like it's raining over there.
It's not raining here. I wish it was. My squash and okra would certainly appreciate it. It rained yesterday. I was just thrilled to death. Poured for about 6 minutes.
Was the Tut-Ruppy Dam okay?
Far as I know. Didn't wash out the Robert E. Lee Natural Bridge.
Oh, that's good. Mercy.
I wanted to get on retention a little bit.
Sure, we can segue to that.
Let me go back, though, to the project you brought up. That was a joint project between Alabama Division and the Tennessee Division. And we basically what it was we put up a monument to the soldiers who served with General Forrest and we put it up at the Forrest Boyhood Home. And that project started when I was division commander. I think Jason Boshears was Army councilman or commander, maybe Army commander at the time. And I'd mentioned it to him at the SD Lee Institute, and he loved it. He said, that's a great idea. And I called James Patterson, who at the time was Tennessee Division Commander. And James said, well, I got to run it by my council, but I can pretty much tell you they're going to want to go for this. And so it was a situation where Alabama Division would supply the soldier and Tennessee would supply the base. And so James was all over it. And he and I got the project started there were a couple dozen people ultimately that were involved in making this happen. But COVID hit and the quarries were shut down. And so Tennessee ran into a little bit of a roadblock getting the base done because the quarries were shut down. So what should have taken maybe a year took, close to 2 years or there, a little bit more maybe. But so it kind of seeped over into Mike McMurray's administration in Alabama and Joey Nolan's in Tennessee. But you had a situation there, and I think this is the point that you were making, where you had two divisions reaching across division lines. You had 4 different administrations that worked together and pulled this off. And that was really the idea that James and I talked about early on. Was when we came up with this idea, you had, the situation in Memphis was going hot and heavy, and we needed a victory. Jason agreed, I agreed, James agreed, we all agreed on this. We needed a victory, and we needed to show a united front. And we did, and we made it happen with, like I said, there were several people involved in this project that deserve credit. And I don't want to call out names because as soon as I call out 5, I'll omit 25 that should be recognized. But just say there were a lot of people in both Alabama and Tennessee that worked together and made this happen. Okay, so to your point, if this can be done at the division level across state lines, it can certainly be done at the brigade level, and it needs to be done. If you've got a camp, you got a camp in one town and there's a camp in the town next door, the county next door that needs your help, well, you're both SCV, pitch in and help each other. That's a no-brainer. You might have talents or resources that they don't have. Great, loan them out to them. we've got to show a united front. I mean, we cannot isolate ourselves. And I'll go back and I think you kind of implied this early on, but the local camp and the camps together as divisions, as brigades, as armies, and throughout the organization as a whole, it comes down to the success of the camp is what will depend on whether we're successful as an organization or not. And I don't think that will ever change. I don't. I think that it will always be that way. What happens from the grassroots in the local community will always determine our success or failure. And what we need is active camps, active members throughout the organization. And before we get into retention, I put this in my article. I think I put this in my article for the soon to be published AOT newsletter. But, as a member of the SCV, you need to ask yourself this question. If I'm not interested in putting the energy into making sure our cause and our history and our organization survives, if that's not where your interest is, what the hell are you doing in the organization? Why are you here? I'm not trying to run anybody off. I don't mean this as a pejorative, as a negative thing. It's a thought-provoking thing. You need to ask yourself that question. What do I want to accomplish? I know everybody can't be involved, 3, 4, 5 days a week. They can't do what you and Moose and Matt do, or whatever, where you're running this show 2 nights a week. I get that, but I bet everybody can do something twice a year. Can jump in and contribute to some function 2 times a year. And I know there are people out there that can't do that. They can't contribute for whatever reason, maybe health, maybe work related. And I'm not trying to run anybody off, but I would compel everybody, or I should say, ask everybody to look at your situation and look at your camp and ask, can I do more than what I've done? And we get, somewhat pilloried for saying, well, you're always hitting us up to do more. Well, yeah, it's our heritage. If we don't do it, who is? If we don't contribute money and time and effort, then guess what? Nobody's going to. It's got to be on us. There's no way around that. If you don't have anything else to say, to follow that up, I mean, talk about retention a little bit. I know y'all talked about this. Was it last Monday or this Monday? I can't remember.
Well, this past Monday we mentioned it, and one thing, because to move on to retention, I don't hide the fact that back in college I was in a fraternity. I enjoyed the time there, and our motto in the fraternity was recruitment is 365. And I think we've got that idea down in the SCV that we need to recruit 365 days a year. But more importantly, because we get it's a swinging door effect that we have. Guys come in, get their certificates, and leave. We need to identify or adopt the mindset that retention is 365 days a year. We've got to have a reason for our guys to not only want to join the SCV, but stay active in the SCV. Yeah, the fact that it's our heritage and it's our battle to lose, that's important. But we're also a fraternal organization, and we have to, make people want to stay around and enjoy the camaraderie and brotherhood. Kicking it over to you, Carl.
Yeah, and I think, I think it was mentioned on the, was it Donnie that was on, and y'all mentioned what the SCV as a whole could do about retention. And there were a lot of good ideas that were presented, communication, information, things of that nature. But I will tell you what I've been saying for years, and, everybody get mad at me if you want to, that's fine. But in my opinion, retention is almost, not quite maybe, but almost 100% on the camp. It's up to the camp whether you will retain members or not. A well-run camp that has an effective camp commander with 3 or 4 or 5 supporting officers that he can delegate responsibilities to as their office, entails. That type of camp is going to retain more members than one that is, let's just throw some crap on the wall and see what sticks. It just is. You've got to have a well-run camp. You've got to have a well-run meeting. When you see meeting attendance drop off, guess what's going to follow? Almost 100% of the time, you're going to see membership follows. You need to set up, think about this. Every camp should have, like I said, 4 or 5 key officers. You got a camp commander, an adjutant, first lieutenant, second lieutenant, chief of staff, maybe chaplain, whatever. Okay. And each one of them has got their area of responsibility. The job of the camp commander is to not go out and do all of these jobs. He's not the chief recruiting officer. He's not the one, all right, I got to recruit. I got to set up recruiting booths. I got to line up programs for the camp meeting. We got a camp member who's sick. I need to go by and visit him and minister to him. And plus, I got to get all of our dues put together. If you're that type of camp commander, you're going to burn yourself out. And when you go, your camp's going with you. Okay, simple as that. You have got to delegate some of these responsibilities out to the people who are supposed to be in charge of them. You need to set up a camp executive council, and it needs to, again, function as a team with each member of that council having his own role. Now, they all report to the commander, and ultimately the commander is the guy who is setting the agenda for the camp, but each one of them, they're like a car engine, the pistons, the carburetor, and all of that, making the entire engine click together. And all of them should be able to reach a consensus as to, here's where we want to go. Here's how we get there. Again, if your camp commander is left to do it all himself, you're going to see he's going to burn out. And there's going to be nobody replace him because he hasn't trained anybody to replace him. If you think about these other offices in your camp, the first lieutenant, second lieutenant, color sergeant, whatever, you're not only putting them in that position to be able to delegate some of the functions to, they're also on the training ground to rise up to be the next camp commander, so that the lifespan of that camp can be perpetuated year after year, generation after generation. A good camp meeting is essential to retention. It's essential to camaraderie. And it needs to be well organized. You need to come in there as a camp commander with a script. I brought notes tonight. First time in the history of this show I've ever showed up and actually have my notes with me. But
actually with you.
Huh? Actually with me. Yeah, that's right. I've prepared notes every time. I run off and leave them sitting on my desk, and my desk is 27 miles from here, so I'm not going to get them. But I just have to wing it most of the time. But have an agenda, have a script. All right, here's what we're going to talk about. There needs to be a set amount of time for business. Okay, you don't need to sit there and discuss business for 2 hours. If you do, you're going to hear snoring. People are going to go to sleep. I actually recommend that your camp executive council, if they can discuss things either in a Facebook group, via email, via chat, via conference call, or physical meeting, just the 5, 6, 8 of them, however many there are, if they can discuss things and say, all right, what did we do on this initiative? What did we do on this? And what did we do on this? And blah, blah, blah. And then you simply show up at the camp meeting and report, here's what we decided. That way you don't have to get into a long-winded discussion and debate about, okay, we've got the such and such festival coming up. What are we going to, that's already decided. Now, of course, the camp can vote, well, we don't like what you came up with, we're going to overturn it. They can always do that. But most of the time, if your ideas are well thought out and they're in the best interest of the camp, that's not going to happen. Most of the time, you're going to have a much smoother flowing meeting by simply keeping the business stuff, all the minute details. It's kind of like this. We've all agreed we want to be in this festival. We don't have to sit here for an hour and debate how we're going to accomplish it. Let the executive council make those plans and determine those things. Okay, so another thing that I've seen a lot of camp meetings is keep frivolous discussion to a minimum in the business session. Nobody wants to hear it. You know, if you got a great deal, on new tractor tires, that's wonderful. Talk about it when you go on break. We don't need to make that, because what happens there, you got a room full of 20 people and you got 3 that are actually interested in this frivolous conversation. The other 17 are zoned out thinking this is not what I came here for. Okay. Right. If that makes sense. I would, in a perfect world, try to keep your business session, I should say, to around 25 to 30 minutes. Okay. And then give more time to your speaker, the program. And you need to have a program. The program is the backbone of what draws people to the meeting. Now, I said speaker, it doesn't have to be a speaker. You know, we got a camp here in Alabama that is in a small town. I don't know what the population is there, but it's in a very rural part of our state, an hour away from any metropolitan area. And they got over 120 members the last I checked. They have music a lot at their meeting, okay? Their retention is through the roof. In fact, I think they were the #1 camp in the SCV in retention a couple of years ago. And it's because people look forward to attending their meeting. They made it a family atmosphere. They have guys that get up and play instruments and sing songs. They have potluck suppers. They have things like that that's entertaining. It's more like a family reunion than it is a business function. And that's what creates camaraderie. That's what gets people, attracts them. Now, you know, again, I'm not saying throw the business out the window. We certainly don't want to do that. If we do, we're ineffectual, okay? But keep the business to the bottom line in your camp meeting. Your camp executive council can line up all the details and take care of the details as to how we're going to accomplish being in this parade. And you simply report that back to your camp and get the volunteers. Yeah, I'm fired up. Let's do that. Okay. I kind of cut it off there and see, you know, anything specifically that you want to hit on.
Yeah, well, just for my camp, I mean, we do our speaker, our program, whatever it is first. You know, we have opening ceremonies, pray in, pledges, prayer, salute, charge, turn the floor over to the speaker. That way the speaker's not having to sit there through your entire, you know, business session and getting, you know, all ticked off. They can take the proper time that they need, and then we run through whatever business we've got, which, you know, my camp, because we have we're very active on social media. We have not only our public page, but we also have a private page, so that if we have to put anything out there like you've discussed that came from our officers group chat, everybody can go ahead and pre-read it. You know, okay, well, this is discussed, this is discussed, this is discussed. So by the time that we get to the business meeting, only thing we have to cover is for that information that has not been covered on Facebook, have not been covered in our private group chats. So then we're able to just run on through and have a good time. Yeah. Another thing that would really help all camps is a proper social media presence, not only for your recruiting but your retention. Because if a camp member misses a meeting, he doesn't all of a sudden feel like he's out of the loop.
Right.
Your social media is becoming your new newsletter, so to speak. Now, my camp, we still do a newsletter and everything like that. But if you do that, then that would really help. The other thing is, and James Martin just commented in the chat, nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something, and that's true. Usually, traditionally, what we do in my camp, and we have a really good retention rate. We're knocking on 90 members right now, and we were only chartered maybe 5 years ago. Is that whenever we get somebody new in and they join in, they immediately get a job. Whether it's, okay, you're in charge. Hey, man, if you don't mind, do you mind taking the passing, going around with our sign-in sheet? So we have everybody's email, phone number, all that. Okay, great. Hey, man, do you mind passing out the pledge cards to everybody? Because not everybody knows especially if they're brand new. Not everybody's memorized the salute to the Confederate flag, and not everybody's has memorized the salute to the Mississippi flag. So we just go ahead and give one to everybody, just in case they need it. Not singling anybody out. If we ever broke down and did name tags, that's another thing. Hey, you're in charge of whether you go ahead and pre-print like one of my camps in Jackson does, or whether you're doing the "Hi, my name is," fill it in, so that everybody can know everybody's name, and you're not. I'm terrible with names. I didn't know Carl's name for a year. But even if it's that, that's something to make guests feel welcome, as well as
and I would add greeters into that. Have somebody who's friendly. Now look, don't get the guy that doesn't talk to be a greeter. Again, fit them to their personality. But yeah, somebody that is that's cordial, and have them just simply, hey, come on in. I'll tell you, the first camp meeting, I remember very vividly the first camp meeting I ever went to. I'd heard about the SCV on the radio, and immediately contacted the individual that from the local camp that was involved, and found my ancestor in a matter of a couple hours. I was fortunate because my great grandmother lived to be 94 years old, and I was 27 when she passed away. So I grew up hearing a lot of stories about her people, as she called them. And so I found my ancestor like in 2 hours. And I went to that meeting though, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into. As far as I knew, it could be 8 or 10 good old boys sitting around a campfire cooking deer meat, which wouldn't have bothered me the slightest, but I didn't know. So I went and I walked into the meeting, and as soon as I walked in, there were 3 or 4 or 5 people, one after the other. Some of them a couple at a time came, hey, how you doing? Are you new here? And I just felt welcome. They had an array of flags behind the table, behind the podium. It was obvious that this was an SCV event, and it wasn't flags just kind of arbitrarily thrown up. It was done in a very honorable manner, where there was some reverence to this meeting facility. But the big thing that stood out to me was how many people came up and talked to me that night and were glad to have me there. And I was hooked from that point on. We had 1 meeting per month in that camp. I'm not a member. I've transferred into it. When I moved an hour north, I transferred to the closer camp to me. But we had 1 meeting in that camp per month, and I made 78 consecutive meetings in a row before I ever missed one. And the one I missed was because by that time I'd become a brigade commander, and I had to go speak to a camp that held its meeting on the same night. But what that should tell you, 78, how that's over 5 years in a row before I missed a meeting. And what it was is that I wanted to be there. I enjoyed it. And we'd have an average attendance of about 45 to 55 people in a meeting. And that was simply because the meeting was so well run. So I've been convinced ever since then that is the key, to retention, and it's got to be done at the camp level. If you've got a camp that has a goal, they've got a mission plan, they've got a business plan, they've got a camp commander that oversees the delegation to his officers of their responsibilities. There's good communication among your camp executive council. Your meetings are entertaining and educational. If you can accomplish just those simple things, the rest is going to take care of itself.
Yeah, it really is, and from you think about it and think about how your camp's being ran. If you were a brand new person coming in for the first time without any knowledge of the SCV, would you be proud would you say, okay, that was something very well ran?
Yeah.
Or would you say, well, that was kind of chaos, but organized chaos, but still chaos, and really don't want to be a part of an organization where they're not going to put any effort into their once a month meeting?
Well, that's right. And look, the general public, I mean, people that show an interest in visiting us, they can pick up on that.
Oh, yeah.
It's not rocket science. You can walk in and look at a camp and tell, whether there was any effort that went into it or whether it was just flinging some crap on the wall, see what sticks. I think Jason Boshiers, when he was Army commander, showed up I think it was Jason that showed up unannounced at a camp meeting. I don't remember. I don't know what division. I don't know if they ever told me what division he was in, but he showed up unannounced and walked in, introduced himself. Nobody knew who he was.
Yeah.
Even after he told them, they didn't know who he was. That's another thing that I think that, I think this was mentioned by Donnie the other night, but simply explaining the structure of the SCV to our new members. I think that's very important. That seems, the average person thing, who cares? I'm just a camp guy. I don't care what goes on outside the camp. Well, you should. Right. And you need to know how your organization functions. You need to know who your contacts up the chain of command are, what their duties are. And if you're just going to kind of stick to your local camp, your local area, how are you really, that's important. That's the bedrock. That's the foundation. Okay. But we need to be willing to help each other out where we can, and knowing who the people are and being in communication to some degree. If you're a brigade commander, visiting your camps once a year, twice a year, once a quarter, whatever, doing those kind of things helps sort of instill the camaraderie. At the end of the day, we are just, we are one people, we are one organization, but it's got a lot of moving parts to it. So.
Yep. Anyway, we've been at it for an hour and 8 minutes and 26 seconds. So I think it's about time to call it. For you guys that are still watching with us, and for everybody that tuned in or are watching later on, these are just some ideas that you take back to your camp. Something that you can try on your own level, and see if it works. If it doesn't work, try something else. There's no one size fits all in this organization. God knows. There's no magic button that we can press and make it work. But if we're not trying to do something, if we're just getting complacent, then if we're not swimming ahead like a shark and walking side to side like a crab, we're gonna die.
Well, there were a lot of generalities tonight, and I didn't want to get too terribly specific, because what works and I think everything that I've told you in general will work, will benefit you, but you need to look at your own unique situation and kind of mold your camp to be in what your unique area, culture, philosophy, whatever, what can fit within that. When I say philosophy, I mean of your camp, not of yourself. So
right. So anyway, guys, Monday we'll be back. Actually, we got something fun to announce. Carl, if you've enjoyed hearing him speak and on our other shows, is taking over our third Monday show every month. We were tied between him and the son of Harold Philpott, but the son of Harold Philpott, I'll be honest with you, he led Thomas Franklin so astray this past national reunion. I don't think we're going to have him back on. Not that he
That's a
came
bummer.
on.
Oh, I'm having him on.
Okay. Well, anyway, if you're enjoying what we're doing, please remember to like, share, subscribe. Remember, we're on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. So there's more than one way that you can view us. If you got a guy in your camp who doesn't want to do Facebook but still wants to get plugged into the chat, take him over to YouTube. Just search for SCV Chat. Anyway, we'll be back Monday with I'm not sure what yet because Moose is not back in town and he's got the schedule of events. But it'll be fun. Maybe. Can't promise anything really. But tune in Monday. And until then, y'all be safe. And I think Matt still says stay Southern, but don't Fumar in the elevator and Rudderfrop.
Rough Rock.
Faversham, everybody.
Faversham.